Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to call to order now the Military Personnel Subcommittee, and today we are going to talk about diversity in recruiting and retention. We're here to discuss what the services are doing to increase diversity, which includes representation of women and people of color. We are stronger when our military represents and connects to those it protects. One small warrior caste cannot bear the burden of service alone. Our democracy is stronger when we all understand the true costs of war waged on our behalf. Diversity is also an asset. Minorities and women have unique perspectives they bring to the fight, and diverse teams are more innovative and effective. We also need to take advantage of all the talent at our disposal. Promoting diversity is also about justice and safety. Women and persons of color have always served in our military, even though for the majority of our history, military policies and culture have been hostile to their presence. Those groups are now serving in increasing numbers, and we need them more than ever. They deserve the opportunity to excel, unencumbered by biases and barriers, and free from hate crimes or sexual assaults that threaten their safety. We've included retention in this hearing because across every service, senior ranks are less diverse. Junior service members are more likely to stay in the military and rise when they can see and be monitored by leaders who look like them. Today's first panel shows what can happen when the services don't focus on diversity and retention. I don't doubt any of your qualifications or commitments, but our military personnel aren't all white men, and our personnel chiefs shouldn't be either. I realize that this is not always the case, but it happens more often than not. There are approximately 1.3 million active duty members in the military. 83% are men and 16% are women. 17% are Black or African American, 16% are Hispanic or Latino, 4.5% are Asian, and around 30,000 are non-citizens. 70% are white. Enlisted members are more diverse than officers, and the percentages have all increased over the past decade, but it is not enough. I'm interested to hear what each service is doing to tackle these challenges. How are you using influencers such as parents, coaches, and educators to recruit diverse populations? What kind of public service campaigns have you launched? What's worked and who have collaborated with you? I also want to know how you're dealing with the ways belonging to an underrepresented group can negatively influence an individual's experience in the military and cause them to end their service. Research shows us that challenges like raising a family or dealing with inadequate health care providers are harder for women, who are still disproportionately expected to be primary caregivers. And complaints by women and minorities are still taken less seriously by doctors. Under-examined cultural norms, practices, and legacies also inhibit the success of women and people of color. Many notions about what constitutes a good Marine, soldier, or warrior simply reflect traits that happen to be held by predominant groups in the service, such as physical prowess, rather than those that actually correlate with success, such as empathetic leadership. In many cases, evaluating all service members by traditional expectations isn't equality or fairness. It's applying flawed criteria that reflect the skills of incumbent groups to a dynamic population with other strengths. I would like to hear how the services are grappling with these complex issues, not just by creating policies that give all service members equal opportunity to excel, but by confronting these cultural issues head-on at every level. I also hope our second panel can help us understand, based on their expertise in this field, activism in service member and veteran communities, and experience on and departure from active duty, how these policies look in the field and what else the services should consider. Finally, I'd like both panels to tell us what Congress can do. Whether it's nominations to the service academies or setting policy, we can affect diversity in the military, and we hope to partner with all of you in that effort. I'd now like to turn it over to my ranking member, Mr. Kelly, for his opening comments.
Thank you, Chairwoman Spear, and I wish to welcome both of our panels to today's hearing on diversity in the military. The strength of our military is our people, and the strength of people is our diversity. With rapidly evolving warfighting and technology, our national defense depends on the military service's ability to recruit and retain qualified individuals with a wide array of skills necessary to keep pace with our adversaries. Given that only 29% of 17 to 24-year-olds are eligible to serve in the military without a waiver, it is essential that services do everything they can to increase the recruiting pool. After reading through the witness statements, it's evident that the services have vastly improved their efforts to recruit from a diverse population. For example, the makeup of the services largely pays the racial and ethnic makeup of the United States population. In addition, the number of women in the military has steadily increased as well. The chairwoman and I recently had the privilege of meeting with female soldiers who were in combat armed MOSs at Joint Base Lewis McChord. And it's clear that the success of these groundbreaking troops is inspiring other young women who may not have otherwise thought about a military career at all. Despite the significant efforts made by the services, there are still areas for improvement. Specifically, the services must redouble their efforts to improve diversity among officer corps. While women and minorities are represented in larger numbers than ever before, the services must look for new and innovative ways to improve recruiting and retention. With the recent opening of combat MOSs to women, I'm very interested to hear from our witnesses today about how these additional opportunities for female service members may impact both recruiting in general and particular officer recruiting. It is also important that the services continue to strive for a diverse force in other areas. In addition to race and ethnic diversity, the services must also consider geographic diversity and diversity of experiences. In an effort to meet in-strength goal, the services often focus their recruiting efforts on the areas of the country that produce the most recruits and the high schools that have had the most success in the past. While this makes sense from an efficiency standpoint, it often means that certain parts of the country, particularly rural and inner-city areas, are greatly underrepresented in the military. I understand that the Army has recently increased its efforts to recruit in areas that were historically overlooked. I would like to hear from all the services about their efforts to broaden the recruiting pool in this way. In addition, diversity of experience is crucial as the services continue to develop and employ new technology. Given increased demands in the fields of cyber and technology, the services may need to recruit individuals who are older and with more private sector experience. Recent reforms of DOTMA have given the services greater flexibility in this regard, and I look forward to hearing from the witnesses how they intend to use these authorities. Once again, I want to thank our witnesses for their many years of service and for being here today, and thank you, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. I ask unanimous consent to allow members not on the subcommittee to participate in today's hearing and be allowed to ask questions after all subcommittee members have been recognized. Without objection. Without objection, so ordered. And now we welcome our first panel, Lieutenant General Thomas Seamans, Deputy Chief of Staff, U.S. Army, Vice Admiral John Newell, U.S. Navy Chief of Navy Personnel, Lieutenant General Brian Kelly, Deputy Chief of Staff for Manpower, U.S. Air Force, Lieutenant General Michael Rocco, U.S. Marine Corps. All right, let us ask that you summarize your testimony in 5 minutes or less. Your written comments will be made part of the record, and we look forward to hearing from you. Lieutenant General Seamans, you may begin.
Madam Chairwoman Spear, Ranking Member Kelly, distinguished members of the committee, I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you on behalf of the women and men of the United States Army. I've submitted a statement for the record and would now like to highlight some of the points from that. People first, winning matters. With these words, our Chief of Staff set a clear azimuth for our Army and the way ahead. America's Army stands prepared today to deploy, fight, and win our nation's war as part of the joint force. People are the starting point for all that we do. Today, the total Army force is the most diverse, the most talented, and the most lethal force in our nation's history. Thank you for your continued work on the NDAA and the support for end-strength growth. The growth you have authorized will provide an even more diverse and lethal force mix of soldiers who protect and defend our nation. The Army continues to make full use of the new talent management authorities granted by Congress in the NDAA 2019. These authorities allow us and provide the flexibility to amplify diversity, give people in our Army the opportunity to be the best versions of themselves. We published the Army People Strategy in October, and it focused on acquiring, developing, employing, and retaining our force, and reaffirms that a diverse Army is one of our strategic outcomes. The Army is committed to equality of opportunity and providing all of our talent people with the opportunity of a fulfilling and rewarding professional career. The Army People Strategy main effort, acquiring talent, is defined as the ability to identify and recruit the diverse military and civilian talents needed to organize, train, and equip a force ready for prompt, multi-domain operations and to include sustained combat operations. As we work to ensure a diverse workforce through the acquire and retain lines of effort, I'd like to share some examples of our success. First, the Army has increased our Hispanic representation in all three components over the last 5 years from 12.5% to 14.6% of the total Army. Second, the Army has increased female representation in all three components over the last 5 years from 16.6% to 18% of the total Army. We've seen the first female Ranger School graduate go on to complete her assignment as the first female infantry company commander and then go on to deploy with the Special Security Force Assistant Brigade in Afghanistan. We want our Army to look like our nation and to reflect what's best of our citizens. As the country becomes more diverse, so has the Army. Today, the makeup of the Army generally reflects the U.S. population. Given today's challenging recruiting environment, it's crucial that the Army leverage every tool available to understand what motivates and inspires and attracts qualified individuals to serve in the military. Our approach to diversity includes diversity of thought, talent, knowledge, skills, and experience, which adds to the richness of our Army. We recruit soldiers from every state and territory so that we truly represent our country. To ensure a diversified pool of recruits, the Army is producing marketing products in multiple languages to raise awareness in different audiences. We're also conducting recruiting and outreach activities focused on educating minority groups about the opportunities available in the Army. Once we acquire the personnel, we must also continue to retain the most talented soldiers, non-commissioned officers, and officers with the experience, skills necessary to meet our current and future needs. Our initiatives are developed with the benefits of diversity in mind. In fiscal year 2019, the total Army achieved its retention mission with the active component retaining more than 88% of the eligible population. The Army is also on track to achieve the retention mission in fiscal year 20. The force we retain has a rich diversity based on talent, performance, and potential. Madam Chairwoman Spear, Ranking Member Kelly, distinguished members of the committee, the Army appreciates your continued support from the committee over the many decades. I thank you for your generous and unwavering support of our soldiers, our civilian professionals, and their families, and your emphasis on diversity across our military. People first, winning matters.
Thank you, General. Admiral Newell.
Chairwoman Spear, Ranking Member Kelly, and distinguished subcommittee members, thank you for the opportunity to appear to discuss diversity in recruiting and retention. The Navy has a proud legacy of providing opportunities for people of diverse backgrounds. David Farragut and Horatio Rivero were our first admirals of Hispanic heritage, and Samuel Gravely, our first African-American flag officer. In 1980, Janie L. Mines became the first African-American female graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, and in 1996, Lillian Fishburne, the first African-American woman promoted to flag rank. In this century, Vice Admiral Carol Pottinger became the first woman to command an expeditionary strike group. Vice Admiral Nora Tyson, the first to command a carrier strike group, and in 2014, Admiral Michelle Howard became the first female four-star admiral in history, the first African-American woman to hold the post of vice chief, and the first woman four-star operational commander. These are just a few pioneers who have entered the history books through distinguished Navy careers. By their achievements, they have demonstrated the strength of a diverse Navy, yet we have made far too little progress, far too slowly, and we are committed to changing that. The emerging challenges of great power competition demand that we remain one step ahead of our adversaries who are persistently challenging our traditional warfighting dominance through new and innovative methods. To do this, we're institutionalizing a culture of inclusion and diversity. We know that one of the key components to maintaining our edge is leveraging an inclusive culture to enhance our greatest warfighting advantage and our asymmetric asset, our people. We're empowering Navy leaders as force multipliers in promoting inclusion and diversity. We have increased participation of diverse talent in outreach events and marketing materials. We've highlighted the Navy's culture, benefits, and programs to showcase Navy as an employer of choice. We're investing in marketing strategies that highlight force diversity and leadership and development opportunities for people of all races, color, religion, sex, or national origin. 19% of our recruiting media budget focuses on multicultural and female prospects. All social media content reflects diversity within the Navy and the recruiting market. We offer NROTC scholarships to minority serving institutions and preparatory programs, and over 1/4 of this year's U.S. Naval Academy accessions were female and minorities. We're implementing strategic coaching and mentoring programs across the career continuum, and through standardized inclusion and diversity core competencies and skills, we've enhanced our ability to develop and retain sailors. Thank you for your support of these efforts and for your unwavering commitment to the men and women of the United States Navy and their families. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Admiral. General Kelly.
Chairwoman Spear, Ranking Member Kelly, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here before you today to discuss your Air Force's ongoing diversity and inclusion efforts in recruiting and retention. We understand we must leverage and optimize the diverse sets of ideas, experiences, and perspectives necessary for generating solutions across our spectrum of challenges, and the Air Force considers diversity a war-fighting imperative. As such, the Air Force set a goal for our force to mirror and be representative of the population of Americans eligible to serve by race, gender, and ethnicity. To track progress toward that goal, we've implemented a monthly Diversity and Inclusion Council chaired by the Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force and consisting of key members of the staff and field commanders responsible for recruiting, development, and retention. The council also includes mentors who represent diverse perspectives and who come from both our current and retired population of airmen. Within our line goal, the current population of American eligible to serve is 57% women, while our Air Force consists of 22% women. The current population of African Americans eligible to serve is 7%, and our Air Force has 15%, with 6% in the officer corps. The current population of Americans with Hispanic ethnicity is 9.5%, while our Air Force is comprised of 13%, with 7% in the officer corps. While we've made strides in improving our diversity with a 4% increase in female airmen and a 5% increase in racial and ethnically diverse airmen over the last 10 years, the demographics indicate we still have a long way to go to satisfy and maintain our warfighting imperative. Recognizing these facts, our Diversity and Inclusion Council focused on accelerating the pace of our gains and improvements over time. Recognizing that operational career fields, particularly rated career fields with aviation, as well as cyber and space, tend to advance to higher rankings and in greater proportions, we have embarked on improving representation within these communities. The Air Force created a rated diversity improvement strategy to engage, collaborate, and innovate across the 4 primary lines of effort: pre-accessions, accession, initial training, and career. This plan features 20 unique initiatives and projects funding in FY19 totaling over $10 million. One of our projects focuses on exploring underrepresented groups to operational career fields, as many youth do not know that they can be exposed to these kind of areas. We also know that Air Force junior ROTC cadets are 10 times more likely to join Air Force ROTC and 25 more times likely to enter USAFA compared to non-Air Force junior ROTC students. In addition, the current ROTC students are 60% minority and 40% female, meaning we have a target population. In 2019, 31% minority and 29% female joined what we now call the Flight Academy. This provides a stand-up in 2018 that allows us to target and expose these underrepresented groups. With 28 ROTC scholarships, 122 new pilots, and 12 academy appointments from the small cohort. While these numbers are small, we believe making an investment in today's youth will provide significant overtime improvement in diversity in Hispanics and underrepresented groups. We've also focused our female applicant pool within the accession sources and have targeted several venues, including women in aviation, girls in aviation, and others with similar outreach on diverse sides. Although the Air Force recognizes recruiting as the starting point of the ecosystem, retention plays an equally important role in building a more diverse force. While our overall diverse population and recruiting numbers have improved, we have not been as successful in retaining women and diverse airmen in longer careers. The retention rate for our female officers in years 6 to 10 is 50% of the retention rate for their male counterparts. Likewise, the population of female officers at the 06 and general officer ranks is 15% and 8.3% respectively, compared to 25% at the company grade officer ranks. The population of the diverse officers at the 06 and general officer ranks is similar, with 14% and 6.6% compared to 29% at the company grade officer ranks. The focus on retention for us has created several barrier analysis working groups to identify barriers to retention and barriers to advancement. The results of these working groups have allowed us to make policy changes that assist with limiting unnecessary challenges and providing development opportunities that enhance family life career balance and do not put female and minority groups in sacrificing one over the other. The Air Force has implemented several of these and continues to do so, including exempting female airmen from deployment or TDY for 12 months after giving birth unless they volunteer, and creating and publishing a requirement for access to lactation facilities such as rooms or pods. The Air Force continues the career and intermission program and looks to expand that with your help. Just this past summer, the Air Force held a FIT program where we looked at new uniform items, flight suits, one-piece coveralls, and aviation bladders as a way to help us make sure that we're being responsive to our female airmen. In conclusion, the Air Force continues to fully operationalize diversity and inclusion to leverage the nation's greatest asset, its remarkable diverse citizenry. But we know we have a lot more to go. We are committed to leveraging diversity to our advantage and look forward to partnering with the Congress in our endeavors to protect and defend our great nation. I thank you for your continued support of your Air Force, those in uniform, our civilian professionals, and the families who supported them, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. General Rocco.
Chairwoman Spear, Ranking Member Kelly, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss recruiting, retention, and diversity in the Marine Corps. Since our founding in 1775, Marines have answered our nation's call faithfully, serving the American people and maintaining a high standard of military excellence. Then and now, everything starts and ends with the individual Marine. Your Marines are recruited, trained, educated, and retained to win our nation's battles. They are smart, resilient, fit, and disciplined. Recruiting high-quality women and men while retaining the best and brightest continues to make the Corps stronger. Diversity remains critical to the Marine Corps. It is our responsibility to ensure the Marine Corps is comprised of the best and brightest from every segment of our diverse society. Diversity must be included in meaningful ways in order to take advantage of the wide array of aptitudes and perspectives necessary to maintain our current and future warfighting excellence. We are committed to capitalizing on the knowledge, skills, abilities, performance, and potential of every Marine. Diversity in the Marine Corps is increasing. In 2010, 30% of the Marines identified as minority. Today, that number is over 40%. And we expect these numbers to continue to rise as 44% of all accessions in fiscal year 19 identify as minorities. In 2010, 6.7% of the Marine Corps was female. It is now almost 9%. These numbers should also continue to rise as females are now over 10% of all accessions. Last year, 12.7% of officer accessions were females, representing the highest percentage of female officer accessions in the Marine Corps since the establishment of the all-volunteer force. Females represented in previously closed MOSs are also on the rise. 6 months ago, I testified before you reporting that 507 females were in previously restricted units. That number is now 650. Females who have earned these MOSs have also increased. When I last testified, there were 203 females serving in previously closed MOSs. Today, that number is 257. And we now have our first female F-35 pilot and first female reconnaissance Marine. We have achieved our accession success by increasing our female-inclusive marketing and by focusing direct mail and advertising to generate awareness and highlight opportunities in the Marine Corps. We are also partnered with a host of diverse organizations across the nation. We have recruiters assigned to every square mile, every zip code, and every public school in our nation. Our goal is to reach the youth and influencers, from the most rural or small towns to the largest of cities. Our recruiters work extremely hard. Their task is challenging. Only 30% of age-qualified youth are qualified for the military, and only 10% are interested in serving, and less than 8% of the females are interested. On the retention side, we are leveraging technology to help understand and someday predict why individuals decide to join the Marine Corps as well as remain a Marine. These efforts include improving current data collection and management, longitudinal accession, retention, and exit surveys, along with cognitive and non-cognitive testing with the objective of identifying and fitting the right person with the right skill into the right billet. Even with our success, there is still a lot of work to be done. While females and Marines who identify as minorities promote at nearly the same rate and sometimes higher than other Marines, they remain underrepresented at higher officer ranks, especially at the general officer level. However, we believe that our efforts today will pay dividends as our junior officers' populations are now more diverse. Today's junior officers will be tomorrow's senior leaders. Inextricably intertwined with recruiting, retention, and diversity is culture. We need to make sure the Marine Corps culture is one of respect, dignity, and inclusion for all. We can do better. This is evident from the research surveys, town halls, and just talking with Marines. A recent study on Marine Corps culture which we commissioned illustrated where we have fallen short, but we are working tirelessly to self-assess and improve. We are updating our fitness report system, which encourages reporting seniors to address diversity, specifically, and I quote the order, summarize the Marines' ability to manage commander's intent and execute higher express goals while fostering a positive command climate with an emphasis on readiness, mission, diversity, and accountability. Command climate assessments have been reordered, and will now be taken to the command prior to the command turnover. Reporting seniors now have the results prior to that final fitness report. We have published a comprehensive prohibited activities and conduct order. We've established a talent management oversight directorate led by the assistant commandant, and I'm on the executive council. We have started an exit and milestone longitudinal survey program to assess why Marines join and why do they choose to leave. Every Marine now takes a tailored adaptive personality assessment system, or TAPAS test, and we have included unconscious bias training in all our schools. The topic is on the minds of all Marines, especially senior leadership, as it should be. It is, more than anything, a leadership issue. Marine leaders must not just talk about changing culture, they must be an example of how to treat your fellow Marines and all individuals with dignity, respect, empathy, compassion. Be servant leaders. I personally consider this my ultimate responsibility. I'm proud to represent the men and women of character, the few, the proud. I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, General. All right, I'm going to start with you, General Rocco. Following the initial Marines United scandal, the Corps commissioned a report on Marine culture, especially as it relates to gender equality. That report is dated March 2018, but was only quietly published publicly in September of 2019. Have you read the report? Thank you.
I have.
I saw the Commandant commented on the report over the weekend, and I appreciated his statements against sexist attitudes in the Marines. Has he read the report as well?
I know he has been briefed on it. I can't say if has actually read it.
So if he hasn't, I'd urge you to suggest to him that he read it. The report draws a distinction between parity, where everyone gets the same treatment, and equity, where different experiences and needs are accounted for in promoting diversity, saying that Marines interviewed, quote, conflated equality with sameness when determining what is fair. Do you agree with the report's conclusion that the Marine Corps' messaging should promote a notion of equality that accounts for different experiences and contexts rather than one that seeks to treat everyone the same?
That's an important question, Chairman, and thank you for asking it. I would start with, we are a standard-based organization, so there is a standard to be held, but I would also take into account, because of the diversity and the importance of experiences and what that brings to the table, that we need to also temper that with the experience that that individual Marine has come to the table with. So, yes, I would agree with you. We maintain a standard, but the reason why it is important, and now diversity is important, because different people look at different problem sets and come to different conclusions, and I think that is very healthy for the institution to bring on board and to appreciate and to respect.
So this year, the Marines' birthday message from the Commandant lasted 8 minutes, but only contained footage of women for 6 seconds, or 1.25% of the runtime. Do you think that's a problem?
I thought the message was well received. As far as only representation, I did not parse the video and look at female Marines for 6 seconds, or tall Marines for this long, or minority Marines for that long. So I think it probably, I know it's being looked at from the public affairs perspective as far as the message and what that unintended messaging was, and I think we're doing an internal look at, we possibly could have got that a little bit better.
I would agree. You could have gotten that a little bit better, because in some respects it reinforces the notion that women aren't really welcomed in the Marines. General Berger told military.com that including more women in the video would have been an artificial elevation, and treat people by two different standards, and we don't do that in the Marine Corps. I hope that upon reflection, was not really what he intended to mean, because we've really got to change the culture. And I think you are nodding in appreciation of the fact. So I will leave that. Let me now move on to General Siemens. You quoted in your statement, "We want the Army to look like our nation." In 2040, our nation will be majority minority. So I think as you look at your responsibilities, that is a huge shift in the population of our military if we're going to continue to reflect the nation that is the United States. Do you have any comments on that?
Yes, ma'am. We're looking at the same demographics in the future makeup of our country. We're doing a number of things to try and make the Army continue the Army on the glide path to look like our nation. For example, we have 22 focus cities where our recruiters are out there in areas we perhaps walked away from during the drawdown other times. So urban areas, places like Atlanta, Seattle, where we didn't have much of a presence, we've reinvested in those areas which represent a rich diversity of our country. We have programs like we're taking a look at Houston and Los Angeles to see what kind of things we can do, both to encourage college-bound applicants to go into ROTC and join the Army, as well as applicants who want to come in and serve the Army. And how do you tap into that market? How do you communicate with them? How do you resonate and explain to them that 150 specialties, everything from a doctor to a lawyer to an infantryman, is available outcome? Our marketing, What's Your Warrior program that's out there, actually talks about the diversity of the Army in terms of who's in the commercials, as well as the various opportunities that are out there.
All right, thank you. Ranking Member Kelly.
One of the things that I know is the military is a family business. And so when we start on a recruiting pool, a lot of times you start with that same business. My brother retired as a command sergeant major. My father retired as a first sergeant. That's me personally. But most of them, it's a family business. It continues. And so what are we doing in each of the services to expand beyond those people who have traditionally served? Because they want to be in, they just don't know they want to be in. So we as parents teach our kids that. What are y'all doing to reach this other groups?
Representative Kelly, thank you very much. I will say I'm guilty as charged. I picture my daughter. She just got out of Joint Readiness Training Center after about 30 days of intense training. I told her I was going to bring her to Congress today. And but I'm very proud of her. Your point is well taken. It is a family business. My dad was in the Army. My brother was in the Army. And we do have to get outside the gates and into the local communities and explain the value proposition, the purpose that you get when you join the Army. And so as we bring people in from across the Army, a couple things we've done. We've sent some recruiters back to the places where they were. We have a program called Meet Your Army, where we send Army leaders out to areas where there's not a big Army presence to meet with school superintendents and have discussions about why their citizens should be interested in the Army, what the opportunities are. We're engaging guidance counselors, we're engaging teachers, influencers across the board to help tell the story of the Army and to expand our pool.
I'm going to go on to the next one. Pre-off volunteer military, folks got a lot of options. You can go to Vietnam or you can go to jail. You can go in the Army or you can go to jail. Okay, that wasn't all bad, because when you look back as a former prosecutor, the people that I helped in life were not necessarily the ones I put in jail. They were the ones that I gave an option and a path to keep from going to jail. So in the military, what are we doing to reach out to those same kids who wound up retiring as command sergeant majors, who had no path but jail on their horizon when they got jail or Vietnam? What are we doing to reach out to those kids to give them other options, which give them a chance for a very beneficial career to them? And let's go with Lieutenant General Rocco, because most of those guys could be definitely Marines.
Well, thank you, Ranking Member Kelly. So the junior ROTC programs, I think, are very effective. I think those are probably short of the ROTCs, which programs in the colleges that are very competitive. I think that is a great introduction to try to reach out to some of those folks and take some of that. And many of those leaders for us are senior enlisted that have retired, that I say walk the walk and talk the talk, so they really can connect with, and they generally go back to their hometowns. So be it from, and as I mentioned in my opening comments, we have representation throughout both rural America, large cities, inner cities. So that ability to reach out to those families. I've got a list here of other things that we do. Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association, the National Society of Black Engineers, the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers. We send representation and folks to all these different venues that traditionally have not had military. I myself do not come from a military family. I'm the first in my family to be volunteering to the military.
And this is for you too, because we're limited on time. But I'm reading the book The Immortal Irishman now, and General Meagher. It was horrible to be Irish in America pre-Civil War, but he got all those sons of Erin and took them and made them warriors on the battlefield and made it a proud thing to be an Irishman who was in the military. But at that time, it was like really bad to be in the military. So recruiting-wise, so he was a great recruiter, right? So you see a great Irishman, one of the seven, and you want to be like him. So what are you guys doing to make sure that our recruiters reflect who our people want to be? What are we doing to have female recruiters and African-American and Hispanic recruiters to go get those kids that we want to increase diversity? And that's for Lieutenant General and Vice Admiral now.
Yeah, thanks, Ranking Member. I think first, you're right. We've got to have recruiting representation that represents all those pools that we want to be. You have to see it to want to be it, right? And you're out there. So we use not only our increase in recruiters, we've added about 189 recruiters, but we use what we call the Gold Bar program. So new airmen, new lieutenants who can represent, we take them and we put them back in the communities for which they came. They get to see those folks. They get to go to the influencers and talk to them. We recently had a fly-in event. We call it a fly-in event in the Dallas-Fort Worth area where we flew in 2 female aviator generals, a number of female captains, female lieutenants into those communities, Hispanic female aviator into those communities, and had them go out and connect with the local ROTCs and junior ROTCs so they can see themselves and talk and influence those folks who are out there. So those are the kind of things that we're doing in addition to what General Rocco said.
Sir, we're doing some things very similar to what General Kelly said. I'd also mention that we've shifted to a digital marketing and advertising. We're getting into the space that those young people are in, and then we're showing them one of the things that we have is Faces of the Fleet. These are sailors that are telling their story, and we've built diversity into that. So, for instance, Lieutenant Eric McGee in the Ascender, he is the grandson of one of the Tuskegee Airmen, and he tells his story. He's an MH-60 Romeo helicopter pilot. That's gotten 1.5 million views, and that directly translates into leads that we go out. And a lot of these are young people that say, wow, he looks like me. I think I could do that.
Thank you. At some point in the near future, could you make available to the committee the gender and ethnicity of your recruiters so we can kind of review that? All right, Congresswoman Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all of you and your dedication to service. I know as I looked at some of the materials here, there have been a lot of studies looking at recruiting, retention, how we align the needs with the community. And I'm just wondering, out of all of that, what has been the hardest thing to actually do within those areas of recommendations?
I'll start, Congresswoman. I think that the hardest thing for us is to connect with those communities where you don't have the legacy of military service and connect with people and get them interested and propensed for military service. So it's this mission of inspiring and showing opportunity and connecting with those folks that there are these opportunities for them to do other than jail or Vietnam, right? So I think that's the hard part for us is how do you inspire a group of Americans to want to join and not just be from the legacy of the previous family parts. And so we're working hard at that and looking at role models and things, but I think that's where we find the toughest challenges and places for us.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to just jump on that real quick, ma'am, is the, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, what was easy? The easiest part was we have listed readiness, mission, diversity, and accountability as a benchmark for a commander to be reported on. So diversity is in the same category as readiness, which for the Marine Corps is absolutely groundbreaking. And what I found in the KAOCL study, which is probably the most interesting, and now all the senior leaders that go out and discuss, and we talk at all the different classes, the academies in the schools and the commander's course is, and it came out of the KAOCL study, was how do you teach a Marine empathy? And that's a great, and that was kind of the bell that kind of rung for me. And that's something.
Have we achieved that?
Well, we do, and we discuss, and we talk about it from personal experiences. You know, we just talking about, I missed my father's funeral because I was deployed. We have a Marine Division commander who talks about a special needs child that he's dealt with through his career. And when you start talking about, so the same families and the same folks that are in that situation, that similar situation, looking at a Marine general or a senior leader going, okay, they somehow got through. That's important. And when we're looking at it from a commander and writing reports on it, I think that's absolutely, that's how we teach it.
Mm-hmm. And because I think part of it is what are we finding that the young people are afraid of? What scares them from even considering it? And how do you make sure that the influencers are available to talk to? And not just that, but are sort of on the ground floor to create some of these inspirational videos, if you will. I don't know how much of that is being done by the very people that you're trying to reach.
Ma'am, I'll just jump on that as well, because one of the things that we're finding is it's not just about getting our faces of the fleet, or we have rating videos where they get to see folks that look like themselves. It's then them taking those and then sending them back out, and so getting that additional bounce. It's about reaching them. And I think General Rocco and General Kelly had it right. It's about culture, and how do we make sure it's so not just bringing them in, how do we then keep that inclusive and diverse force?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're spending a lot of time working at all levels of leadership to get that into the education program.
I wanted to ask you as well about junior officers, because is it correct to say that if we actually worked as hard as possible and made sure there were no barriers to people who could rise and ascend within your services, and you're all kind of competing against one another in many ways, that would make a huge difference. And they're in our services, and yet in every report there are countless barriers that are noted. So what is that? Where does that leadership come from to be sure that we have those opportunities and that we're helping and assisting them to be able to take the measures that are needed over time? It doesn't happen overnight, you know that.
No, Congressman, you hit on it, right? There's all kinds of challenges, and I mentioned the barrier analysis working groups that we do, and we identify a variety of issues and things that come up. You know, we've had 4 female airmen rise to the rank of 4-star, one to become the first female combatant commander, Lieutenant General Lori Robinson, right? But for every one of those in those cohort, if we don't retain the ones that we have, the 26% that we have at 01, by the time they get to 06, 07, 08, the cohort in the pool is so small. So we've working really hard on identifying those barriers and trying to knock down those barriers. And the barriers are coming from them. We're asking them, what are your issues? You know, where you're at. The analysis groups, the barrier analysis groups are made up of the ground floor grassroots airmen that are telling us what's going on.
So what are they telling you in terms of?
It's a variety of issues. So you hit on during your open comments, Chairwoman, about you know, the challenge between trying to do career and family versus service, and we've tried to do a lot of things and continue to do a lot of things to remove that. Don't make it an either or. How do we balance both, and what do we put in place to do both? Simple things like female equipment, right, for helmets and bladder control and flight suits that weren't there, that just become unnecessary annoyances, that we're just trying to remove those annoyances so that we don't have these issues where somebody's going to feel like, why do I want to stay if I'm not as appreciated? The cultural things that General Rocco talked about.
You know, I was just recently told that, and I don't know which service it is, but that the female uniforms are more expensive than the male uniforms. So would you take that back and report back to us on what the costs are? Because that is coming out of their pockets after the initial uniform, is it not? Yes. All right. Thank you. Mr. Cisneros? Congressman Cisneros.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you all for being here today, gentlemen. And General Rocco, I'm going to address this question towards you, but it's really open to anybody who could answer it. So I have a friend who was a Marine who enlisted, did ECP, which, you know, the Marines help pay for. Later on, was sent to school by the Marines to get a master's degree. The Marine was promoted to major, and he hit his 20 years. Now, the Marines invested a lot of money in him and educating him and helping him out, but at the 20-year point, he decided to retire. I mean, we can't prevent individuals from retiring at 20 years, but what are we doing when we have these individuals that we're investing a lot of money in that are, really grooming them, or hopefully to be grooming them? How are we convincing them to stay in the Marine Corps or any service when we've invested this money in them, especially, and my friend too, he's Latino, I should say that as well, especially when we see that there's a lack of diversity up in the senior ranks?
Thank you for the question. Not knowing the individual case, so what we have done is we've started the exit milestone and longitudinal accession or survey. And what that is designed to do is basically categorize, and we're using artificial intelligence to capture all this data, as to why the person joined the Marine Corps in the first place. Then at different career points, they take the survey again to see what they like or don't like about the Marine Corps. At the 4-year mark for enlisted, at the officers, it's the career, when we're career designation point, and then of course it's when they get promoted to major, and then it's when they leave. At this point right now, we don't have enough data to be conclusive on it, but he is absolutely somebody that I would love to talk to, because we've invested a lot. In my job as Manpower and Reserve Affairs, we have a lot of naval postgraduate officers that are pulled out of their MOSs and they're sent to Monterey. They receive a graduate degree in a technical field, and then they become data analysis, and they're very important on the work that we do. They actually promote at a higher rate than if you did not go to Naval Postgraduate School. And I have it broken down by ethnicity and broken down by gender. But the fact of the matter is that's someone that we would have wanted to hold on to. I can't speak to why he would have left, and the reasons are varied. But that is someone, as you say, we've invested a lot of money in. And I think just for the and not really as a warning, but our new system, our BRS system, I think is updated. It's a great retirement system. I fully support it, but we've now moved that 20-year mark, which is retirement, and we've moved that to about 12 years, where the individual member can leave the military with an awful lot of money. So that, I think, and that's something that we're looking at, and we're putting in a lot of brain power into trying to figure out what exactly we need to do to now, instead of capturing that 20-year-old major or 20-year Marine, we now have to do that at 12 years, which is a disadvantage because they're much more marketable at 12 years of service, vice a little bit older at 20 years.
And Vice Admiral Knoll, I'll address this question to you. So I did Navy ROTC, and I was a political science major. But I recently went back and I looked at the requirements, and I would not have been able to get that ROTC scholarship. It's pretty much all STEM careers or STEM majors is what they're looking for today. And when you look at a lot of the people that are studying STEM in college, it's not women, it's not people of color. And I'm sure a lot of you are really kind of have that same emphasis on STEM and the officers that you're looking for. But really, are there any programs that any of the services are running to reach down to maybe into the middle schools, the high schools, to partner with them to kind of get people of color, to get women involved in STEM and really help groom them into becoming those future military officers?
Sir, thank you for those questions, and you're exactly right. We do think that we've got to get to that level. We do that with some of the influencers that you mentioned earlier, as well as the JROTC units. When you look at that diversity, I think the statistic is something like 42% female and 62% ethnically and racially diverse. So one of the things that we've started to go ahead and try and give some folks a leg up as they compete for those ROTC scholarships is something we call the NROTC Preparatory Program. It's patterned after the Naval Academy Preparatory School, where we'll give folks a one-year, tuition-free stay there at NAPS before they go to the Naval Academy. But institutions are paying for room, board, and tuition for these students, and if they get through, then we'll guarantee them a 4-year scholarship. We have 67 in that program this year, and with a goal of 200 over the next few years. And these are colleges and universities partnering with us and looking at the talent at that lower level that you mentioned to then try and make sure that we have a more diverse population there at NROTC, as well as the Naval Academy and OCS.
Thank you. Are the other services doing that as well?
Chairwoman Spear, within the Army, the United States Military Academy has programs that go out to STEM programs to 7th and 8th graders, both at West Point and a traveling show, to make awareness about the opportunities within the Army and to encourage them to consider a service.
Air Force?
Yes, Chairman, we're doing similar kind of programs, including a drone UAS kind of program where we go out to middle schools and high schools and try to get them interested in that. We've participated in Hispanic STEM Week, a variety of ways to try and get down to those organizations and try to influence at that level, knowing that you have to start early.
General Rocco?
Well, not surprisingly, the Marine Corps, while STEM is important, I mentioned in my opening remarks about TAPAS, and what we've really determined is more important than education or what that undergraduate degree or what the education is. It's the grit. It's the grit and determination to perform in the military. So that's why we're having everybody take the TAPAS test, which is basically a grit test and non-cognitive test that will you succeed in the demanding environment of the military.
All right. Congresswoman Escobar.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you so much, gentlemen, for your service and for your testimony today. Back in my home district, as I'm sure my colleagues can understand, we have lots of incredible young people who are asking for our support as they apply to the service academies. And it is one of the most wonderful aspects of the job to see all of these hopeful faces, these young people who are excited about their future and have so much to offer our country. And in my community, the district I represent, El Paso, Texas, we are a minority-majority community, home to Fort Bliss. And 85% of my constituency is Latino, a quarter are immigrants. And to see so many young people of color and so many young women envision their career with one of as a service member is exciting, but the numbers in terms of their ability to break through and to get into leadership is heartbreaking. And we've talked a little bit about women, which obviously is important to me, as well as the topic of Latinos and Latinas in service. 18% of Americans are Latino, and that is reflected in the military, absolutely. And I can tell you, we have so many Latino members of the community who, again, who've devoted their lives in service and whose children are also wanting to devote their lives to service. But only 8% of the military is made up of Latino officers, and that number shrinks. The number is actually really shocking to me. Only 2% of Latinos make it to general and flag officers. And so all of you have given a lifetime of service. I am very curious, just your own personal perspective, why is this the case?
Thank you for the question. I would submit that when we talk about general officers or flag officers, it's if we're looking at the captains or colonels, we're almost too late in the equation. We have to get to, kind of to your point, to the accessions, to the lieutenants, to the academies, to ROTC, and start the process. So the Army is working to make up lost ground in terms of our representation of Hispanics in the formation, but we won't solve it today or tomorrow. It's got to be a long-term approach. It's got to be an investment in those young men and women who aspire to come into service, and to encourage them to serve, apply, and be competitive. Right now, our numbers aren't where they need to be, and we'll continue to work that. As Chairwoman Spear said, by 2040, I think you said 40%, or majority, So we have to get after it. We have to focus on it and be deliberate in our efforts.
And I so appreciate that. And you and I have had this conversation before in my office and appreciate that conversation. And I appreciate the commitment going forward. My question is more of a look back. How did we get here?
So, Congresswoman, I don't have complete analysis or complete understanding of how we got here, but I'll tell you that one of the barriers that we've been able to uncover through our barrier group is a lack of official mentoring. So there are lots of important effects that happen between a mentee and mentor relationship. And so what we established is we established this program we call MyVector that lets people list their backgrounds and their interests and where they're at, and has mentors list their backgrounds and interests, and we make pairs, and we make mentoring pairs, and we put responsibility on the mentor to make sure they're doing coaching and going through and giving good advice and giving good help to those folks. Because what we find out is sometimes our underrepresented groups come in, and by the time they get to those ranks, they didn't know about an opportunity, they didn't know they should be doing certain things, they didn't know they should be taking these steps that are going to increase their chance for advancement. So we're starting early on mentoring and making sure we're doing that. We're hopeful that's going to improve that. I don't know how we got there, but that's one of the things that we're doing to try and improve it.
And it sounds like from what you're saying is that sometimes service members don't know what opportunities lie ahead. That's on us then. That's on us. Gentlemen, anyone else?
If I can have an alibi, ma'am. Within the Army, we have migrated to what we call AIM2. It's a marketplace for our officers. So we have 15,000 officers who are moving in summer of 2020. In the past, Human Resources Command would take a look at an officer, what their qualifications were, and give them 3 to 5 options. We put every assignment in the marketplace, and everybody had an opportunity, all 15,000, to make a value proposition to the unit as to what I would bring to the unit, and every unit has an opportunity to say, this is why I want you on my team. And so we think that's going to increase the diversity. There's a lot of talent out there, quiet people, introverts, people who have exceptional capabilities that are not recognized, and we think this will bring that to the top.
And ma'am, and that's a great question. And so on the enlisted side, we actually do very well on the senior enlisted side. When we look at our Latino promotion rates at the E8 and E9 level, they do very well. On the officer side, not as good, as you pointed out. And I will say for the Marine Corps, and I don't have a good answer for you, but I will tell you on the Marine Corps, when you look at, we have less than 100 general officers. Our average promotion rate to general officer for the population is less than 3%. And right now, we have 15 general officers of diversity, 4 female, 5 African American, 3 Hispanic, and 3 Asian. That statistic is not to defend we're doing well, we're not doing well. We can always do better. But that's one of the things that we're taking a look at. And again, from analysis on the exit milestone and longitudinal survey that we're doing, we're trying to gather that information. And that, because that's one that stands out. Again, percentages not being the same. We do better on the enlisted side. We don't do as well on the officer side.
Thank you. I'm out of time. I yield back.
Thank you. Actually, most of you could do a lot better in the officer area than in the enlisted. I'm curious whether or not you've considered doing recruiter bonuses to augment the numbers of persons of color and women. Is that something that you've contemplated? Do you ever give recruiting bonuses to recruiters? And if so, have you contemplated doing it as it relates to people of color and women?
Ma'am, I'll just let you know that actually as we look at our recruiting force, and we fairly recently transformed the way that we do recruiting from the standpoint of going away from a single recruiter, working someone through the whole process to focusing on their strengths. Are they best at sourcing and sales, finding, classifying, or then onboarding? And that's reduced attrition, which is good for all categories. But we have also added an incentive that if they as a team meet their goals, and we do have the diversity goals, then the team gets a kicker to their special duty assignment pay. So we are using it in somewhat the manner that you just described. I'll also mention that as you look at the sailors, the future sailors that we're recruiting, there are incentives for them to bring their friends in as well. And so, you know, that helps us grow from that manner as well.
Any other comments?
Just in the Marine Corps, ma'am. So last year, there was a 40% diversity on the enlisted side, and about 30%, just over 30% on the officer side. So I think they're doing a good job. Again, a merit or standards-based organization.
Not in gender, though.
I'm sorry.
Not in gender, though.
Yes, ma'am. We're low. That's exactly right. Although we have increased it every year, we still haven't certainly gotten to where the population is and where the female population is.
I think you need to go to girls' high schools, yes.
Can I make one comment? The only thing I caution you about as the senior personnel, if we start putting all of our women and minorities, okay, into drill sergeants and into recruiters, we take them out of those key qualifying positions, okay, whether it be NCOs and so we may actually, when we're talking about the senior level leaders, if we put them there, we may cheat them out of being here. And I just ask that you watch the second and third order effects and make sure that we're not putting all our women as recruiters or drill sergeants or those commands and cheating them out of the opportunity to become GOs. And so I just really caution
Very good point. But particularly for the academies, I think going to girls' high schools and religious high schools. Certainly in my experience, I have a higher number of applicants from the Catholic schools, which is maybe just a phenomenon in my area, but it's worth looking at for all of you. All right, any other questions for our panelists? I hope you're all going to stay to listen to the second panel. Thank you very much. We're going to take a couple of minutes recess so we can change out the panel. Thank you all very much for being here and obviously for your service to our country. Okay, Gil, read. All right, we are now going to begin our second panel. Thank you for being here. I guess we're missing Ms. Campos Palma, is that right?
She's just in the restroom.
Oh, she's in okay, well, we'll give her that. Okay. Our first panelist is Ms. Kayla Williams. She's currently a senior fellow at the Center for a New American Security. Kayla was enlisted in the Army for 5 years as an Arabic linguist, serving in the Military Intelligence Company in the 101st Airborne Division. She is also the author of Love My Rifle More Than You, Young and Female in the U.S. Army. I love the title of that. Our second panelist is Pam Campos Palma. She's currently a strategist who is known for building change through grassroots efforts. She has served in the Air Force as an operations and anti-terrorism intelligence analyst, where she deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. She'll be joining us momentarily. Finally, Bishop Garrison is a 2002 graduate of the U.S. Military Academy and served 2 tours in Iraq prior to leaving service. Mr. Garrison is currently the Director of National Security Outreach at Human Rights First. We will start with you, Ms. Williams. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Chairwoman Spear, Ranking Member Kelly, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss a topic I believe is of vital importance to the long-term strength of the United States military. It is an honor to have been asked to share my experiences as a minority in the military, including what drew me to service and why I left. As a child, I occasionally got food stamps and free school lunches. The shame of growing up in poverty was coupled with gratitude that the nation had invested in me. As a young adult, I vowed my children would never have to experience the fear of eviction. So anxiety drove me to pursue any opportunity to enhance my long-term financial stability. The military offered me training in high-value skills and access to the GI Bill, but crucially, it also provided a way for me to repay my debt to society through service. During my 5 years in the Army, including a deployment to Iraq, I acquired both tangible skills and invaluable intangible attributes such as perseverance and confidence. Unfortunately, being forced to constantly navigate an environment that frequently seemed unwelcoming to women ultimately drove me out. I faced chronic and pervasive gender discrimination and sexual harassment, ranging from snide comments and offensive cadences to being repeatedly propositioned and experiencing unwanted sexual contact. The pervasive attitude among my peers was that this was to be expected in a male-dominated environment. Men almost universally discouraged reporting problematic behavior because doing so might ruin the perpetrator's career. Women often discouraged reporting as well, warning that doing so would hurt my career. Lack of accountability when I did report incidents was totally disheartening. Sexual assault, harassment, and discrimination harm military retention, full stop. Leaders must value the careers of talented women over those of criminal men. Rates of harassment and assault have not dropped substantially since I left active duty. Reporting remains relatively low, and retaliation is still high. Recent examples of senior leaders being relieved of command for sexual harassment or toxic command climate indicate to me that the zero tolerance message emanating from the top is still not taken seriously at all lower levels. That type of bad behavior was almost certainly apparent earlier in their careers and did not stop these leaders from climbing in the ranks. Extensive coverage of this concern affects recruiting as well. Young women and their parents often ask me whether I would recommend military service given this risk. Other outdated and unfriendly policies and practices that disproportionately affect women were the other major driver behind my exit. Caregiving responsibilities that developed when my spouse was severely injured in Iraq were incompatible with Army life, and there were no off and on ramps at the time that would have allowed me to resume my career effectively once he was stabilized. Athletic, muscular women who score high on physical fitness tests are often subjected to outdated, inaccurate, embarrassing tape tests to determine body fat percentage. Equipment and clothing are often ill-fitting for women. In Iraq, men could urinate in tubes right next to tents while wearing flip-flops. Women had to fully gear up and hike a quarter mile for every bathroom break. The only socks for sale in the shopette were size large. They never sold hair conditioner. Needing birth control on deployment to regulate menstruation had to be explained to providers or even commanders who did not understand that this was about hygiene, not sex. Each of these small indignities alone is minor and easy to ignore. Cumulatively, they constitute a barrier that drives down women's retention with death by 1,000 cuts. The combination of near daily personal interactions, waiver requirements, and outdated policies that constantly remind women we are other, outside who was being considered when norms were established, forced to struggle to fit into an institution designed for men. DoD and the services should seek to identify and eliminate outdated and discriminatory policies and practices across life domains to keep talented women and other minorities once they are serving. As the military works to modernize its recruiting strategies and messaging, I also call upon Congress to increase the number of young people who qualify for military service through national programs to reduce obesity, increase physical fitness, continue educational gains, and end the school-to-prison pipeline, problems that disproportionately affect minority communities. Congress should also end discriminatory policies such as the military transgender ban, and members can ensure diversity among their nominees for the service academies. The military must compete for top talent across demographic sectors in a rapidly diversifying nation. And while I have focused primarily on women, these issues are broad-ranging and intersectional. We risk critical failure should we need to dramatically expand the size of the force, and accordingly must increase the population that can meet military standards, improve recruitment so troops can better reflect our nation, and enhance efforts to retain talented personnel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Just for the record, my 3 nominees last year were all female, the first time ever. Ms. Campos-Palma.
Thank you, Chairwoman Spear.
We introduced you in your absence, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Ranking Member Kelly and members of the committee, for the opportunity to speak before you today. My name is Pamela Campos-Palma. I served in the United States Air Force as an operations intelligence analyst from 2006 to 2016 on active duty and as a reservist. While on active duty, I had the privilege of serving overseas in Germany, Iraq, Kyrgyzstan, and Afghanistan. I was born and raised in a working class town near Boston, Massachusetts. My mother immigrated there from Honduras. She was the one who pushed me to enlist when I was 18 years old after a school administrator dissuaded me from applying for college based on her racial bias that, quote, someone like me would not succeed there. Not having any connections to college-educated people and having no familiarity with the US military, my mother took me to the recruiter's office and had me enlist for money for college, a chance at upward mobility, and the opportunity to serve my country. I chose the intelligence career field knowing nothing about it, except it required high ASVAB scores and was among the most difficult military jobs to get into. I assumed it would grant me the best chance to work in a secure environment and have better job prospects. My military career was full of challenges. Some grew me in incredible ways, and others were rooted in systemic failures that resulted in unjustified harms, avoidable inequities, and made it largely untenable for me to serve to the best of my ability and with integrity. I count myself lucky that my career started with a senior intelligence officer, an SIO, at my first unit who showed me what a good military leader was. He modeled respect and integrity, pushed personal and professional development and mentorship, encouraged ingenuity, and most of all, and most importantly, he cultivated a culture of accountability. I worked hand in hand with high-level commanders, law enforcement, and air crews, was responsible for briefing complex attacks, highly sensitive analysis, and recommending courses of action. In addition to this extremely demanding high-stakes job during a high operations tempo, at the time it was ranked #1 for suicides, my military service as a queer woman of color was marked by several additional issues. Throughout my military career, sexual violence, harassment, and gendered hostility were and remain part and parcel to military service. In addition to seeing and supporting peers who'd been raped or intervening in various near-rape encounters, I myself experienced assault multiple times. One assault was a homophobic retaliation by an airman who resented I would not return their advances. The feeling of being preyed upon and undermined from within made an already challenging role even harder. Despite the military's pluralism, the Armed Forces personnel management and policies failed to recognize and modernize to the needs and long-term wellness of its diverse force. Personnel policies that touch on health, physical fitness, career development, naturalization, inclusive service, and family planning are broken and biased against women, parents, people of color, and LGBTQ service members, and set us up for failure. Standards set by and for white men as the default starting point fails to see the whole forced picture, and we know that it results in terrible uniforms and gear designed for women, dysfunctional promotion pipelines, body dysmorphia, eating disorders, depression, misdiagnosed women's health issues, to name a few. The foremost reason I left active duty was the issue of unchecked, toxic leadership and the culture of impunity and lack of oversight that enables them. One bad leadership transition is all it took for my unit, which was once known for top excellence, to become rife with fraud, waste, abuse. I was a target for outright racial and sexist discrimination and retaliation. I saw junior officers' performance reports and careers held hostage to dissuade them from intervening or whistleblowing. Most importantly, functional and trusted mechanisms to meaningfully defend or protect myself felt scarce. Over the course of my career, I saw significant brain drain of the best leaders decisively leaving, in large part because of the high tolerance for corruptive behavior, especially at the highest echelons. In the end, it is irresponsible to rely on targeted recruitment of people of color, women, and working class people as prospective enlistees into an enterprise that cannot offer the most basic workplace accountability, securities, and retention. Timely and related, a more diverse military does not solve our retention problem that service members are burned out by endless deployments, costly training, and taxing personal and familial hardships for questionable, never-ending wars. This is an increasingly growing sentiment as training accidents continue, lives are lost, suicide rates have not substantively gone down, and moral injury grows. In addition to urgent action towards military justice reform, research sanctioned by Congress that specifically surveys minority groups is vital. Specific objectives around enlisted women with distributed race representation across branches, transgender, gender nonconforming troops that are currently in and have been discharged within the last 5 years, troops of color, and religious minorities is vital to get direct insights and assess the scope and scale of structural and cultural gaps. More assertively partnering with our allies, mill-to-mill contact with Australia, Canada, and Great Britain in their own research design, which I would say is more advanced than ours, and work around these problems is essential. I was encouraged several times to commission in the United States Air Force by ranking officers I deeply admired. I joined the reserves specifically wanting to make a change from the inside, even if it was in a small part. And although it was a more safe and healthy environment, thanks to a masterful intelligence commander, with much sadness, I realized that I had outgrown the institutional and cultural limitations and had to continue my service to my country in a different capacity. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Garrison.
Chairwoman Spear, Ranking Member Kelly, distinguished members of this committee, thank you for holding this hearing and for the opportunity to provide this testimony. In the early morning of September 11, 2001, I walked out of my National Security Law Seminar with a close friend and fellow West Point cadet. As we turned the corner, we came across a young instructor, a major, who was transfixed by footage displayed on his projector. Inexplicably, a jetliner had crashed into a tower in the financial district of Manhattan. The World Trade Center, he told us. We were dumbfounded. How could such a horrific accident take place? Then, together, we watched as the second plane crashed into the South Tower, erupting into flames. The major glanced over his shoulder in our direction and then back to the screen. Well, gentlemen, he told us, it looks like we're going to war. We graduated June 1st of the following year, 2002. By February of 2003, I was in the Anbar province of Iraq for my first of 2 deployments. But I was no stranger to service. My mother was a career educator in South Carolina, and my father, who was drafted and received the Bronze Star in connection with his service in Vietnam, spent his career helping veterans find work through the South Carolina Department of Employment and Workforce. Notwithstanding their upbringing in a segregated South, they always stressed the importance of giving back to both community and to our country. But when my father was recruited to attend officer candidate school, he declined. Though he excelled in the military, men from his 1st Cavalry Unit, all white, have reached out to me to praise him over the years. My father saw an army with leadership that did not seem to value men of color equally. Although the military has made remarkable strides toward a true meritocracy since my father's era, serious problems linger. I am immensely grateful for the opportunities my military service provided. I would not be sitting before this committee today had it not been for what I learned and achieved in the military. My appreciation and love for this service is, in fact, why I believe it is so important for this committee to engage in this discussion. But had I been afforded more direct mentorship and more examples of leaders who reflected my own life experiences, I would have been more likely to remain a member in the Army. Like my father a half-century before me, I decided to seek out other ways to continue serving my community and my country. Before addressing the challenges we face and potential solutions, I'd like to establish why diversity of our military forces matters. First, it fosters cohesion. A report from Cornell University states that some studies have found that higher overall levels of cohesion are associated with individual benefits of increased job satisfaction, retention, and better discipline outcomes. This suggests that promoting inclusivity and respect within the ranks is not only the right thing to do morally, but also a matter of national security. A more cohesive unit is a stronger fighting force. Moreover, in order to address a diverse set of threats across the globe, we must strive to include a diverse set of life experiences and perspectives. The young female intelligence analyst from Oakland will view the world through a different lens than her male counterpart from Biloxi or from her older leader from Santa Fe. And this diversity helps overcome groupthink or tunnel vision, which in war can prove fatal. It is also important to note that some of the current discourse in American society and some of the current administration's policies could be affecting interest in serving, especially among minorities. The militarization of our nation's southern border, the deportation of veterans, the potential rescission of the parole in place program, tenuous status of Dreamer service members and veterans, the transgender service ban, the fact that many major military installations are still named for Confederate leaders, the ongoing worries about white nationalism in the military's ranks, and the fact that an individual who holds extreme views on race continues to serve at the highest level of immigration policy making. These factors risk causing a detrimental impact on our military's ability to recruit and retain new and diverse talent. While this issue is admittedly complex, congressional action can play a stabilizing role. I welcome the opportunity to discuss concrete suggestions today or can provide them at a later date. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Garrison. I'm going to yield my 5 minutes to Ms. Escobar because she has to leave to go to Judiciary.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And to our panelists, I cannot tell you how powerful your statements and your testimony have been. And I'm grateful that leadership is in the audience to listen to this. You've gone through a long list of really challenges that are so significant, it's almost impossible to know where to begin. Beginning with Ms. Williams, what you described as cumulative indignities, and Ms. Campos Palma, the repeated sexual assaults and attacks that you described. Mr. Garrison, you are absolutely right. When we allow racism space in our country, we shouldn't be shocked that it takes root within our institutions and becomes an obstacle to embracing and celebrating diversity. And so I feel as though the questions that I was thinking through are so not appropriate in that the challenge is greater than I think we even realize. But to try to get to the root of this and to try to begin to carve out a path for solving this tremendous challenge that we have as a country within our ranks and within our military, I want to ask you about the culture. And if each one of you could just very briefly tell me, when there were complaints, when you sounded the alarm, when you shared the information with your peers and with your leaders, were you met with sympathetic, compassionate ears and leadership that said, I'm going to go out on a limb to protect you? Did that happen? Or what actually did happen when you sounded the alarm?
When I filed complaints, no appropriate action was taken, or if it was taken, I was never made aware of it. That led to me not continuing to raise my voice and to instead try to find other ways to deal with situations informally, which still could lead to peer retaliation. And I definitely did have some leaders who were willing to back their folks. Unfortunately, it was not universal, and the pressure from peers to be silent was also very strong. I want to say that I do believe that rigorous and sustained efforts at culture change can work if it's coupled with accountability. To give an example of why I believe that, look at the rates of drug use within the military compared to civilian culture. Illicit drug use among military personnel is 0.7% compared to 16.6% of US adults. If rates of sexual misconduct are anything similar within the military to civilian society, it shows that it's not taken as seriously.
Thank you.
It's an interesting question because I don't know that it's just about willingness. I also think it's about capacity and power dynamics. I think in such a hierarchical institution, it's really difficult. And I think also an institution that is constantly doing life and death missions, work, operations, prioritizing where we put our capital as leaders, where we put time, was always something that I felt really conflicted by. I would ask, when I experience things that I think we're trained to say, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel in alignment with our core values. It would also be, don't rock the boat, right? The mantra, shut up in color. I never understood it, and it's in direct contradiction of our first core value in the Air Force, integrity first. And so what I found was incredible officers and NCOs that wanted to help. But in my case, as I mentioned, when they did try to step up, it was not convenient. They then were at risk. And I think it's even worse for enlisted forces, right? And so I think that genuinely we are trained to want to do the right thing, but I think that, and this is different between the branches from my understanding with peers, but there is a culture of not wanting to rock the boat and thus not wanting to step in front, right? Don't be the first and don't be the last. And so I think that that's one of the biggest things that we need to change, is to reward people. Where are the rewards for whistleblowers? Where are the rewards for people that are saying, you know, assault and rape of my peers in my unit is not good? I know too many who have been punished for doing the right thing.
And it'll just have to be really quickly because I'm out of time.
I'll make as fast as I can, Congresswoman. For me, the biggest thing was when I did have leaders that wanted to address me and wanted to help, culturally, they simply did not know how. And when you talk about it, I served my time in a 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment, Brave Rifles. And within the officer corps at the time, you look across a unit of thousands of men, dozens of officers, and you see 3 African Americans. So it's really hard culturally to understand my life experience and to be able to connect and engage with me in a way that is going to be meaningful and actually have the proper impact.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for your voices.
Ranking Member Kelly.
Thank you, Chairwoman. It's an all-volunteer force, and so I'll tell you this. I come from Mississippi. I think there's nobody here who'll say there haven't been some racial issues in my state. But I didn't make them better by leaving the state. Okay, I was able to see one of my mentors, General Leon Collins, who was the first African American commander of the 155 BCT as a brigadier general, the first African-American officer in the Mississippi Army National Guard, and I went to war with him. What a great leader. But he stayed there because he fought through all the things that happened at my alma mater, Ole Miss, the James Meredith being admitted, all those things. He fought through those and persevered so that he could be that example for all the other African-Americans that followed. The same thing happens with females. We have to have strong people. So as a brigade commander in the 168th Engineer Brigade, I had the first woman battalion commander who served as me as a brigade commander, and she was a battalion commander. That's not that long ago. I had African-American battalion commander, my entire staff, but I fixed that by being there. They fixed that by being the next generation because now there's no excuse. As brigade commander, I was followed by the first two African-American brigade commanders who have followed me, one who's still in command, who are people who I hope that I'm a mentor to. So my question is, Mr. Garrison, especially you, because I respect you so much and your father, okay, but we can't fix it. We need guys like you to be there right now so that you can be a GO. But you know what? You're not there. So what do we do to make sure that the Garrisons and the Campos Palmas and the Williams, what do we do to make sure you guys become the role models for the next generations of leaders, the ones who will carry that mantra and be that next African-American brigadier general or four-star general or the next female or Latino or whatever? How do we do that?
Sure. Thank you, Congressman. First and foremost, I appreciate your words on that, Ranking Member. The biggest thing I would say is that we have to keep in mind we do not make these decisions and policies in a vacuum. We are a nation that has been at war for nearly 2 decades now. By the time I finished my second deployment, I'd been deployed for 2 years out of roughly about 34 months. So out of 36 months total, I was gone in Iraq during that time. So that takes a toll. We're at a point now where we're looking at members who have service members who have been on multiple deployments, who have been gone 5, 6, 7 times. It is not to take away from any potential service that has happened in the past or between wars previously, but it is a different dynamic that we're working with that this nation has not dealt with previously. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, as I mentioned before, some of the societal effects that we're seeing in domestic policy and in our nation are having an effect on interest of young people to serve. There was a report done recently by the National Defense University that said 73% of African Americans in active duty service right now are incredibly proud of their service. When asked if they would recommend service to a young person, 45% said absolutely not. That is a problem that we're facing right now, and it's a part of this dynamic. And when we talk about, and some of these things are things that Congress can affect, we can look at, I would recommend that Congress take a look at the nominations process and see how we're actually drawing talent for the academies, as well as look at the demographics for ROTC, because it's not just the academies that we get leadership from. We get it from ROTC as well. But we have to ensure that whatever policies we put in place reemphasize the importance of keeping these young junior military officers in place so they can go through the ranks and they have those opportunities.
Yeah, and I think part of that is, I mean, I was in with General Miller today, and his service stripes, overseas service stripes were above his elbow, which means he's had more time downrange than he has before, okay? And that's our senior leaders. I mean, I was gone for 3 years out of 5 at one point in my kid's life. 3 years out of 5, I was downrange. And so we all face that, but how do we get African-American, Latino, is that recruiting HBCU universities and ROTC in greater numbers? How do we get greater numbers at the entry level? Because until they're at the entry level, we can't get them at the exit level. And then we have to have people, we got to figure out what it makes, what it does to keep them to stay to be a senior officer. Yes, ma'am.
I think that I find it interesting that in your question and even in the last panel, there seems to be this focus on bringing people in. If they don't have mentors and solid, if the people that are going to be their commanders, their supervisors, the wing commanders are not stable, then we're setting them up for failure. So I think that's first. I would also say, the last time I went up for a commissioning board, we were asked, if you become an officer of the United States Air Force, what is the single issue that you want to tackle? The person I was going up against said fitness. My answer was I would eradicate sexual violence in our military, because at the time we had just had 3 colonels convicted for, well, not convicted, they were found in inappropriate behavior. They weren't convicted. And they had a female colonel speak to me afterwards to ask me if I had something to share, if I was okay, is everything all right? And I said, why? And they said, well, the board found your answer a little concerning. And so I think that the way that we measure and define strength, progress, success is really important, more than ever. So when you say that we need strong leaders, I'm curious what that is. And I'll just finish by really quickly saying that hearing the last panel, I did have some pride in being Air Force. I know we get a lot of jokes, but Colonel Gina Grosso was one of the great officers that I had a privilege of serving with. She was the first woman high-ranking general in personnel in this role, and she warned us about this. She said, do we need more brawn or do we need more intellect? We're going to have to look at a different way of measuring strength in the military. So that's what I would say.
I agree, and we don't have time. I've got to yield back. But I do think some of the people sitting at this table, we need you to stay, and I'm saying that not to y'all, but the other people who are out there, we need you to stay to be tomorrow's senior leaders, to be those mentors, because we can't get mentors without people staying. With that, I yield back, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Congresswoman Davis.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. And you know, it's interesting because as I was sitting here in the first panel, I really did want to ask, what impact do you believe that the events that we have been through in this country over the last 20 years, if you will, have really impacted recruiting, retention, and culture? And obviously, there's a difference in recruitment after 9/11, which, you know, Mr. Garrison, you brought up as well. But I just was wondering about the connection. It felt to me like, in some ways, with all due respect to our first panel, that, you know, then it's almost like the reverse. Like, I would like to know from all of you what the impact of hearing our witnesses here has been, if any. You know, is that a story that you've heard many times over, or is that something that often you don't have an opportunity to listen to and to sort of hear about, whether it's toxic leadership or whether it's a concern about the perception of where we are in the country in terms of respecting all individuals? And so I think that's, you know, sometimes you want to go back and forth a little bit and have that discussion. So let me go to the panel in front of me right now and just ask, I mean, in addition to what's been said, Mr. Garrison, you did say you had some ideas for the Congress, and you've all mentioned this in some way. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that in terms of, again, taking in the discussion that you heard earlier? How can we connect those stories, that which you bring, and also by the great leadership of our country that's been here as well?
Yes, Congresswoman. I'll try to make my remarks brief so my colleagues can have time to reply as well. There are 2 things quickly. There's one thing the ranking member asked about that I neglected to hit on. I would say eradicating white nationalism within our ranks has to be of paramount importance. It's something that is affecting the discipline of our units, and it's something that is going to continue to affect the recruitment and retention of our talent pools. The other thing that I noted, particularly from the Army G1, from General Siemens, he mentioned focusing on the urban areas, 22 different cities, and the Warrior program. I think those are great tools, but those are part of the process. My question is, when you're going to those cities, what is the content? How are you designing these programs in a way that will best affect and ensure that you have the maximum outcomes that you need in order to bring these young recruits in? And I think the process is incredibly important, but we have to continue to review what content, how are we designing these programs to actually engage with these young people?
Thank you.
I'm very interested in the contradiction that a warrior class that is so trained in high levels of discipline, there's a disconnect there then when who gets disciplined, I think, is really important. we were having a conversation earlier, I think it is imperative, if we allow people to get away with toxic leadership, abuse, corruption in the military, it sets the standard. And in my opinion, it is the standard. Story after story that comes out of some person abusing their power in the military, our institution of discipline, of strategy, says to everyone that we are illegitimate. And how can we even be trusted? And so the military currently is the most trusted institution in our country. I think that we have a big threat of losing that if we do not make examples of high-level offenders. And it doesn't have to be outright rape, right? Of course we need, it is, even, and this bleeds over into the veteran community. The trauma that is then, that then transpires within the military ranks and then outside of it because we're not rooting this out. But also, as in my case, abuse of power. Where is that? And also good models of leadership. I wish that I could tell you high-level leaders, first shirts, that are being rewarded in the way that they deserve, and I don't think that they are.
Thank you.
To respond to some of the things that I heard in the first panel, first I want to mention that as somebody who has aged into the influencer demographic, I want to praise the Navy for a really great ad they have targeting me as the mother of a daughter. They're doing great. I think the Army's Warriors Wanted campaign isn't as well suited for the modern era, and I really hope that the next phase, highlighting other jobs, is going to be better at attracting a more diverse population. And then to talk about retention, Lieutenant General Rocco mentioned the importance of mentoring. And I want to call out the grave concern that in the era of heavy emphasis on sexual assault and harassment prevention, and then also coupled with the Me Too movement in the civilian sector, we have heard both within the military and in the civilian sector of men being more reluctant to mentor women because of their fears in this climate. So how do we combat that so that we have men willing to mentor the next generation of leaders as women, because we don't have enough women to do all of the mentoring of all of the rising ranks. So that's an area of concern that I'll raise. Thank you.
Thank you.
I must say that all three of you have provided remarkable testimony. My heart broke a couple of times as I listened to each of you talk about your experiences. You are great service members, and the fact that you left is a great stain on our military. And I would hope for all of our chiefs that are here, and thank you so much for staying, I think you can recognize that there are some strong messages coming from each of you, and you have to be listened to. There's too much happy talk, and we need to spend more time drilling down with a serious discussion about what's wrong and kind of face it and address it. So Ms. Williams and Ms. Campos-Palma, what years were you in service?
I was active duty from 2000 to 2005.
I was active duty from 2006 to 2010 and the reservist 2011 to 2017.
I'm sorry, and the reserves between 2010 and 2017, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
You know, I've been working on the issue of sexual assault in the military now for over 9 years. And when I hear these stories, I just, I shake my head in disbelief that we still can't seem to. We have spent so much money and given so much attention to this issue, and I fear that we're not having the impact we need. Now, in fairness, you served before we took this issue as seriously as we do now. I'm just wondering to what extent your experiences aren't being replicated even now in the military. To you, Mr. Garrison, I join my colleague, Ranking Member Kelly, in saying what a loss that you are no longer serving. I guess my question to each of you is, if you were sitting here as opposed to there, give me 3 steps that you would take in terms of dealing with the issue of retention. We didn't spend as much time in the first panel on retention, but what are the 3 steps you would undertake to encourage that we do not lose talent like each of you represent? Ms. Williams?
Thank you. First, to your question of whether or not sexual harassment and assault efforts have taken root, 2006, the sexual assault rate of active duty women past year was 6.8%, and 2018 it was 6.2. So I don't see that as tremendous progress. And please note that the rates are significantly worse for LGB service members. That's reflected in my written testimony as well as DOD's own reports. But please, in terms of intersectionality, this is a grave concern. For things that I would encourage, a total scrub of policies to look for unintended discriminatory effects and to carefully review Dakowitz's well-researched and thoughtful recommendations. You asked for 3, but those are 2.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Campos Palma.
There was a lot of conversation, I think, around representation, but we know that representation doesn't exactly mean leadership. And so I think there needs to be an analysis around what levels of leadership. People like Colonel Grosso, did they get to meet their agendas? Did they have real power to implement changes and policies? So what do the exit interviews look like for our highest ranking diverse leaders? Secondly, the military justice system fails us. Not just for sexual assault, but as Mr. Garrison mentioned, white nationalism is a considerable threat. And if I was in right now, in the units that I'm in, I've done this exercise, I don't know how I would really report that, right? So clarity and really taking a look at the military justice system. And I would also say, just a fine point on military justice, who are the people we're willing to lose? I think is extremely important. As he mentioned, are we simple things, like are we streamlining naturalization processes for citizens in the military? Third, our military strategy and identity is in crisis and is failing our people. I would suggest you look at specific intelligence career fields that have now shifted to a different military strategy, different region of the world. Cyber has now forced us to look at different ways that our military will have to operate in the future. And so in this question of, are we in the right conflicts, and are we fighting these conflicts wisely and burning our people out? Missions like the DCGS mission is a good place where people have started to say, to me personally, I'm seeing different patterns. People aren't as depressed, people aren't as burned out, there's better life balance. We're gonna have to move to that mission, I think, and so I would urge you to speak specifically to those individuals who are already starting to see changes.
Thank you. Mr. Garrison.
Yes, Chairwoman, thank you. I've already given you one idea in terms of the white nationalism. Another thing I would say is that we do want to be careful of running the risk of, if you're familiar with the NFL, they had a rule called the Rooney Rule for a bit, where every interview had to include a person of color, and what you ended up seeing is that they would just do the bare minimum, have that person of color, and then go with whatever candidate they ultimately want to go with. So the one thing I want to say is that we need to create a culture in which we are pushing our leaders to ensure that they are identifying top talent among people of color and among women, and that they understand the importance of identifying that. And it's not simply to check the box. I am heartened to hear what the G1s had to say today. I think that we are definitely on that arc, moving in that direction, and we're beginning to see that. But it is incumbent upon the civilian authorities, Congress and the executive, to ensure that we hold them accountable, and we're continuing to make sure that that is something they're ultimately doing. And we want to create a culture that has true inroads and rewards those who look to lift up those from vulnerable communities more often, and really look at achieving that talent. We have a system right now in which everyone has to meet the standard. There are not different standards for anyone, and we have to do everything we can to re-emphasize that and ensure that our military, the culture, understands that that's the fact, and we want to do everything we can to reward individuals who meet those standards.
All right. Thank you very, very much. That will conclude our hearing today. There is a lot of grist for the mill. Your contributions have been extraordinary, and I want to say thank you again for the service you provided when you had a uniform on and the service you provided to us today. We stand adjourned.